president is the head of the state. He or she is the first citizen of India and is a symbol of solidarity, unity and integrity of the nation. The president is the supreme commander of Indian Armed Forces. Namaskar, hello and welcome viewers. You're watching the special presentation of Sansad TV on Presidential Election 2022. As the term of office of President Ramnath Kovind ends next month, an election to fill this impending vacancy will be held on July 18th. In this edition, you'll get to know everything you wanted to know about this high-profile election. So get ready for this speed ride.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
India achieved independence from the British on 15th August 1947. Initially as a dominion within the Commonwealth of Nations, with George VI as king, represented in the country by a Governor-General. The Constituent Assembly of India, under the leadership of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, undertook the process of drafting a completely new constitution for the country. The Constitution of India was eventually enacted on 26th of November 1949 and came into force on 26th of January 1950, making India a republic. The offices of Monarch and Governor-General were replaced by the new office of President of India. Rashtrapati Bhavan, home to the President of the world's largest democracy, epitomizes India's strength, its democratic traditions and secular character. When constructed, it was called the Viceroy's House. The name changed to Government House on August 15, 1947, when India became independent. Finally, its name was changed to Rashtrapati Bhavan during the term of President Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Chairperson of the Drafting Committee of the Constituent Assembly of India, Dr. Ambedkar said, and I quote, "Under the draft constitution, the President occupies the same position as the King under the English Constitution. He is the head of the state, but not of the executive. He represents the nation, but does not rule the nation. He is the symbol of the nation. His place in the administration is that of a ceremonial device on a seal by which the nation's decisions are made known." Unquote. The Indian Constitution accords to the President the responsibility and authority to defend and protect the Constitution of India and its rule of law. Invariably, any action taken by the executive or legislature entities of Constitution shall become law only after the President's assent. The President shall not accept any actions of the executive or legislature which are unconstitutional. The President is the foremost, most empowered and prompt defender of the Constitution, who has the preemptive power for ensuring constitutionality in the actions of the executive or legislature. The President is the head of Union Executive. Consequently, all executive powers are exercised in his name. As the head of the executive, the President appoints the governors of the states, the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts, the Auditor General of India and many other high officials such as the members of Finance Commission, Election Commission, Union Public Service Commission. The President also appoints the Prime Minister and with his advice, the other ministers of the Union Council of Ministers. But here too, as in all other appointments, the President can seldom use his discretion. He is duty-bound to summon the leader of the political party which secures an absolute majority in the Lok Sabha to become the Prime Minister and form the ministry. Union Council of Ministers normally remains in office for 5 years, unless dissolved earlier for any reason. The President must be satisfied that the Council of Ministers enjoys the confidence of the majority of the Lok Sabha. Except when both houses of Parliament are in session, the President may also promulgate ordinances. The Constitution of India empowers the President to proclaim 3 kinds of emergencies: national emergency, emergency for failure of constitutional machinery in a state, and financial emergency. The President of India also grants pardons or reprieves punishment to any person who has been convicted by a court of law. The President also summons the sessions of Parliament and also addresses the joint session of Parliament. The 2022 presidential election will be the 16th presidential election to be held in India. On 21st June 2022, Yashwant Sinha was unanimously chosen as common candidate of the UPA and other opposition parties for the 2022 presidential election. On the same day, NDA chose Draupadi Murmu as its presidential candidate. Draupadi Murmu, a tribal leader from Odisha, was named the ruling NDA's candidate for the forthcoming presidential election at the BJP's parliamentary board meeting. Coming from the state of Odisha, Murmu is the first governor of Jharkhand to complete a 5-year term and the first person belonging to a scheduled tribe to be named by a political party for the post of President of India. Hailing from Odisha's Mayurbhanj district, Murmu started out as a teacher before entering state politics. She has been an MLA twice on BJP ticket, in 2000 and 2009. She has diverse administrative experience. An arts graduate from Ramadevi Women's College, Bhubaneswar, she almost spent 2 decades in politics and social service.
अपने एनडीए के घटक के लोगों के साथ बातचीत करते हुए और लगभग 20 नामों पर हमारे यहाँ लंबे दौर की चर्चा हुई और चर्चा में सब लोगों के साथ बातचीत करते हुए एक सर्वसम्मति इस बात पर बनी कि सभी नामों पर चर्चा हुई, विस्तृत चर्चा हुई, लेकिन कुल मिलाकर के ये बात सामने आई कि हमें प्रत्याशी के रूप में कोई पूर्व से ढूंढना चाहिए, भारत के पूर्वी क्षेत्र से ढूंढना चाहिए और हो सके और हमारा प्रयास हो महिला को हमको स्थान देना चाहिए। और आज तक कोई आदिवासी ट्राइबल प्रत्याशी राष्ट्रपति के रूप में नहीं आया है, इसलिए हमें ट्राइबल पर और पहली बार कोई ट्राइबल को भारतीय एनडीए की तरफ से हम कैंडिडेट बना सकेंगे ऐसा संसदीय बोर्ड, पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड का मत था और इसलिए श्रीमती द्रौपदी मुर्मू इनको राष्ट्रपति का प्रत्याशी घोषित किया गया है।
Yashwant Sinha, the former IS officer who worked for the Janata Party, then the Bharatiya Janata Party, has been named as the candidate for the post of the President of the nation by the opposition parties. Yashwant Sinha had joined active politics as a member of the Janata Party after resigning from the IAS in 1984. He had been appointed the party's All India General Secretary in 1986 and was elected as a member of the Rajya Sabha in 1988. When the Janata Dal was formed in 1989, Sinha, a founding member, was appointed as party's General Secretary. He later joined the BJP and held important portfolios in the Vajpayee government. Before becoming the Union Finance Minister in the BJP-led National Democratic Alliance's first full-term government, which took office in 1998, Sinha had held that portfolio in Chandrasekhar's cabinet as well from November 1990 to June 1991.
अपोजिशन पार्टी को इकट्ठा रहना और एक रस के साथ रखना ये जरूरी है आज के वक्त। इसीलिए हमने वो यूनिटी नहीं तोड़ना, इसीलिए हमने ये सोचा कि सब मिलके जब एक होकर एक नाम सामने पेश किए हैं तो हम सब मिलके सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। हमारे नेता भी यही बात कही, इसीलिए हम आज यशवंत सिन्हा जी को बात करें।
The process of electing the president in India is not like some other democracies, say the US. Well, we have broken down the process of electing the president of India in simple terms for our viewers. Who can vote, the voting procedure, and the other mechanisms involved. Take a look at this detailed analysis. Under Article 58, a candidate should fulfill the eligibility conditions to contest the election to the office of president. He or she must be a citizen of India, must have completed 35 years of age, must be eligible to be a member of the Lok Sabha, should not be holding any office of profit under the Government of India or state government or under any local or any other authority subject to the control of the said governments. However, the candidate may be holding the office of President or Vice President or Governor of any state or ministers of the Union or any state shall be eligible to contest elections. A nomination paper of a candidate for the election has to be made in the prescribed form. At least 50 elected representatives must propose a candidate who must then be seconded by 50 other electors to run for the president's office. The requirement of having a certain number of electors propose a candidate was introduced after the experience of the first 5 presidential elections. It was common then for several candidates to put themselves up for election when they did not have a remote chance of getting elected. In the 1967 presidential elections, 17 candidates contested, but 9 of them did not win a single vote. This repeated again in 1969 elections, when out of 15 candidates, 5 did not secure any votes. To discourage the practice, candidates had to secure at least 10 proposers and seconders each to contest the elections from the 1974 election onwards. A compulsory security deposit of 2,500 rupees was also introduced. The changes were brought through an amendment to the Presidential and Vice Presidential Act 1952. In 1997, the Act was further amended to increase the security deposit to 15,000 rupees and the minimum number of proposers and seconders to 50 each. The President of India is elected by an electoral college. This college comprises the elected representatives of the government that form the government after being elected in the state assembly and national elections. The citizens of the country directly elect these representatives. These elected ones then vote for the president, in theory representing the people who would ideally vote for the president. The President of India is elected by the members of an electoral college consisting of the elected members of both Houses of Parliament and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the states, including the National Capital Territory of Delhi and the UT of Puducherry. The members nominated to either House of Parliament or the legislative assemblies of state, including NCT Delhi or UT of Puducherry, are not eligible to be included in the electoral college. Unlike a traditional ballot, where the voter casts one vote only for her selected candidate, a presidential election ballot does not follow this system. What it follows is the single transferable vote system. According to this, each voter marks out his or her preference for the presidential candidate. If there are 5 candidates, for example, the voter will get 5 preferences. It is mandatory to give a first preference, as the vote will be declared invalid in its absence. However, if the voter doesn't give other preferences, the vote will be considered valid. The election shall be held in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of a single transferable vote, and voting at such election shall be a secret ballot. The ballot paper does not contain any election symbol. There will be 2 columns in the ballot paper. Column 1 of the ballot paper contains the heading, name of the candidate, and column 2 contains the heading, order of preference. The vote quota has come about as a result of proportional representation, which ensures equal representation to all groups. Simply casting or indicating preference is not enough, as the person with the most number of votes or first preferences does not win the presidential election. The total number of valid votes decide how many votes a candidate will need in order to be declared winner. This number is divided by 2 and added to 1 to form the benchmark of winning. Should any candidate fail to reach the vote quota, the candidate with minimum number of votes is eliminated and her votes are transferred to the other candidates on the basis of the second preference. If the vote quota is achieved, a winner emerges, but if it doesn't, the candidates with the least number of votes is eliminated again and others get her votes on the basis of the third preference. The presidential election uses a special voting to tally the votes. A different voting weightage is assigned to an MP or an MLA. The value of each MLA's vote is determined on the basis of the population of their state and the numbers of MLAs. Due to a constitutional amendment passed in 2002, the population of the state, as per the 1971 census, is taken for calculation. The value of an MP's vote is the sum of all votes of MLAs across the country divided by the number of elected MPs.
The manner in which votes are calculated is also different in these elections. Let's start with how the value of votes of MLAs is calculated. There are about 4,000 MLAs across the country. These MLAs come from different states. The value of vote of each of these MLAs is not the same. So, for example, MLA from a larger state has more value attached to their votes than as compared to the smaller states. The value of each MLA's vote is calculated based on the population of that state. And this population is used from the 1971 census. The next thing that happens in these elections is the calculation of votes of MPs. Now, the value of vote of all the MLAs put together is equal to the value of votes of MPs. And each MP has a similar value of vote. And these values combined together, the value of vote of all the MLAs across the country and the value of votes of all the MPs, then becomes the total value of votes that is cast in a presidential election. The candidate who gets more than 50% of the votes gets elected.
While normally members of parliament vote in New Delhi and the members of state legislative assemblies, including the members of the legislative assemblies of NCT Delhi and UT of Puducherry, vote at the place fixed in each state or UT capital, facilities are provided by the Election Commission for any MP to vote in the capital of state, and similarly, an MLA may vote at the polling booth set up in Parliament House if he or she is in Delhi on the date of poll. However, the MP or the MLA who opts to vote in place other than the place where the member is designated to vote is required to intimate the same to the Commission well in advance for making necessary arrangements. In exceptional circumstances, MPs and MLAs may be permitted by the Commission to vote at other state capitals as well.
So how are votes counted? Well, after the valid ballot papers are segregated from the invalid ones, the valid ballot papers are distributed or counted on the basis of first preference marked on each of them.
The counting of votes takes place in rounds. In round 1, only the first preference marked on each ballot is counted. If any of the candidates secures the quota, at this stage, he or she is declared the winner. If no candidate secures the quota in the first round, then another round of counting takes place. In this round, the votes cast to the candidate who secures the least number of votes in round 1 are transferred. This means that these votes are now added to the second preference candidate marked on each ballot. This process is repeated till only one candidate remains. It is not compulsory for an elector to mark his preference for all candidates. If no second preference is marked, then the ballots are treated as exhausted ballots in round 2 and are not counted further. Once a president is elected, he holds office for 5 years. He sits in office even after the completion of 5 years, given no new election has taken place or no new president has been elected till then. He can also be re-elected, and there is no cap on his re-election. Can the president be impeached? Yes. According to Article 61, the president can be removed from his office before the expiry of his term only on the grounds of violation of Constitution. However, the Constitution does not define the meaning of the phrase violation of the Constitution. The impeachment process can be started from any house of the Parliament by levelling charges against him or her. The notice bearing the charges against the President must be signed by at least a quarter of the members of the House. The resolution to impeach the President must be passed by a special majority, that is 2/3 in the originating House. Next, it is sent to the other House for consideration. The other House acts as the investigative horse. A select committee is formed to investigate the charges levelled against the President. During the process, the President of India has the right to defend himself or herself through authorized counsel. He can choose to defend himself or appoint any person or lawyer or Attorney General of India to do so.
By convention, the Secretary General of the Lok Sabha or the Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha is appointed as the returning officer by rotation. This year, the returning officer for the presidential election is Rajya Sabha Secretary General P.C. Modi.
By a notification issued on the 13th of June 2022, the Commission has appointed P.C. Modi, Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha, as the returning officer for the presidential election 2022. Two other senior officers of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha Secretariat and the secretaries, one or more senior officers of legislative assemblies of all states including NCT Delhi and UT of Puducherry, are also appointed as the assistant returning officers. the Election Commission of India makes such appointments. In 2022, Mukul Pandey, officer on special duty, and Surendra Kumar Tripathi, Joint Secretary of the Rajya Sabha, have been named as the Assistant Returning Officers.
Did you know that India's sixth president, Mr. Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy, who served from 1977 to 1982, was the only president to be elected unopposed? Here are some interesting facts about our past presidents.
Rajendra Prasad was the first president of India. He is the only president who served the office twice, eventually becoming the longest-serving president. Dr. Radhakrishnan was the first vice president of the country and second president of India. Zakir Hussain was the third president of India, also the first Muslim president. He also was the first president who died in his office. He was the shortest-serving president of India. Venkat Giri was the first vice president who became the acting president of India. He also received Bharat Ratna in 1975. There were 3 interim presidents of India apart from 14 full-time presidents. Venkat Giri, Muhammad Hidayatullah, and B.D. Jatti were the interim presidents. Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy, the first Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. He became the youngest president ever at the age of 64. One of the incredible feats that Reddy achieved was that he renounced residency at the Rashtrapati Bhavan and took a 70% cut in his salary as a gesture towards the poor economic conditions of the masses in 1977. Gyani Jail Singh was the first Sikh president of India. K.R. Narayanan was the first Dalit president of India. At 76 years and 271 days, he was elected as President of India, making him oldest president to be elected. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was popularly known as People's President. In 1997, he was awarded with Bharat Ratna. Pratibha Patil was the first woman president of India.
India will know who the successor to President Ramnath Kovind will be on July 21st. The winner will be then sworn in to office by Chief Justice of India. The term of the current president ends on July 24th. Well, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Namaskar.